Greetings, early childhood education students. What I want to do now is share with you some friendly writing reminders to help you in writing for our class as well as any other needs that you have for writing. So, Mr. K's friendly writing reminders. Starting off, I want to share with you that this is not an English class, and I am not an English teacher. This is merely a kind of summary of some writing things to help you learn a few things that might help you as you write for our class. First of all, I want to start off with 5 reasons why writing is important. First, accurate writing shares your message. Poor writing distracts from sharing your message. So if you are writing a paper for our class and you write accurately, you're going to be able to tell me, your teacher, what you want to tell me. However, if you have poor writing, I'm going to have a really hard time understanding what you're trying to communicate to me. So it's important to write accurately. The second reason why writing is important: if our writing includes misspelled words and grammatical errors, our reader may notice the errors and miss our message. So if there's so many misspellings, so many grammatical things in a paper or in an answer, I have a hard time really seeing what you're trying to communicate. So try to eliminate all those errors so that you can communicate clearly. Reason number 3, when our writing is full of mistakes, it may show laziness. So, for example, if a potential boss sees that you're lazy in your writing, they may think that you're going to be lazy in your work. As you fill out a job application, or as you write a resume, or you write a cover letter to go with a resume, if these documents show a lot of errors, the person may not want to hire you because they may think, oh, this is a lazy person, or this person can't write competently. So you want to be able to write well to get yourself whatever kind of job or whatever kind of maybe college entrance that you would like. Reason number 4, as a teacher, because this is an early childhood education class, as a teacher, we want to show our students, parents, and coworkers good examples of using the English language. We want to show that we're a competent professional, capable of teaching their children the English language. So if I am a preschool teacher and I write a letter to all of the parents at the beginning of the school year, and the letter that I write is full of grammatical errors, spelling errors, then the parents might read this letter and think, oh my, this person is going to be teaching my child and they can't even use English very well themselves. That might raise a concern for them. And the last reason I want to share with you is as a student. So you are currently a high school student, and hopefully you want to be successful in your classes. Writing is a big way that students have of showing their teacher what they've learned. So if you're taking a test and you're writing a short answer response, your teacher's going to be reading that to understand what you've learned. For our class, our students are writing a final exam essay where they're sharing 10 things that they learned in this class. And as a student, I would hope that you would want to be really good at letting me know the 10 things you've learned in our class and why these things are valuable or important or worthwhile to you. Now I'm going to jump into selected writing tips and reminders. Again, this is not an English class. I'm not trying to teach all of the English language, just share some tips of things that I've noticed in student writing in the past. The first thing is the 5-paragraph hamburger essays. So if you're not familiar with writing an essay, essays always start with an introduction and they end with a conclusion, and then the meat is in the middle. So in this case, introduction is the top bun, the first point paragraph, second point paragraph, and third point paragraph, followed by the conclusion. So a really good format for writing an essay. For the essay that you're writing for us in class, you're writing about 10 things that you learned in this class that are valuable to you. So I created this using AI. I have a top bun for the introduction, a bottom bun for the conclusion, and then a whole bunch of meat in the middle. And each hamburger patty, if you will, represents one of the things that you learned in our class that is a valuable thing to you. The next slide is about AI. So I want UI. I want your intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So you could easily write a prompt into an AI tool and it could spit out a paper for you, but that's not what I want. What I want to see is what you think, what you learned, and why this is important to you. Please resist the temptation to use AI. I know that it's out there. I know it's easy. I know that it writes well. But again, I want to know what you learned in our class. If I suspect that you may have used AI, I'm going to check out your truthfulness simply by asking you a bunch of questions. I might ask you to explain something. I might ask you to give me some examples of something. I had an experience earlier in this class where I read a paper by a student and it didn't sound very much like a high school student. It sounded like a college student or somebody who was a really good writer. And I suspected that it wasn't written by a high school teacher or student. I expected that AI was being used for it. So one thing that clued me off is it talked about using iPads for helping children to learn, which I know is nothing that I ever talked about in our class. So make sure you use your intelligence, not artificial intelligence. The next slide talks about taking your reader on a smooth ride. So imagine you're driving someplace. The very top one shows at the left is the start of your paper, the right is the end of your paper, and you've taken your reader on a smooth ride. The next one down is pretty good as well. You've got the start of your paper, the end of your paper, and you've taken them on a ride that's pretty smooth. It's got a few bumps in it, but it's still good. But the bottom one is the bad one. This one is a crazy, twisty, turny road, and you don't want to take your reader on a ride that is smooth, that is bumpy and rough, because at the end, they're not going to feel well. They're going to feel car sick at the end of reading your papers. So you want to make sure that you take somebody on a smooth ride when you're writing. This slide is on punctuation marks. So again, this whole presentation is shared with you in the assignment for our final, but this one shows the different types of punctuation. When we are speaking, we come to a full stop, which is where a period would go, and then we start our next sentence and explain something additional. Period. So I want to make sure that you're using periods and commas and all the different pieces of punctuation accurately in your writing. This one is on capital letter rules. When do you use a capital letter versus a lowercase letter? So as this graphic illustrates, the beginning of a sentence should always be a capital letter. When we're using a name, it should be capitalized. Even when you're writing your own name on a paper, make sure you capitalize your first name, make sure you capitalize your last name. Places should be capitalized. Calendar things like days and months and holidays. If you're writing a title of your paper, the important words should be capitalized, and more helping words like and or of should be lowercase. And really, really important, the pronoun I. If I am writing I am happy, the I should be capitalized. Or if the contraction is I'm happy, the I should be capitalized. The only time a lowercase I should be used is when it is in the middle of a word. I know with texting, a lot of people use lowercase I when they're talking about themselves, but when you're writing a college paper or a high school paper, make sure you use capital I's. The next slide just goes more into depth on using a lowercase I versus an uppercase I. This slide talks about contraction. So a contraction is usually two words that are put together using an apostrophe. So like the example, I'm is the equivalent of I am. When you're writing a paper for school, you usually don't use contractions. Usually that's a little bit too informal. But if I'm writing an email to a friend, I would definitely use contractions. So this one is just to show you different contractions that we have in the English language. The next slide is really about using Google Docs. So when you use Google Docs for writing, it's going to put some underlines on your text to help you as the editor. If an underlined word is red, if you see a red squiggly line, it tells you that you've got a spelling problem. You've spelled a word incorrectly. A blue squiggly line indicates a grammar problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the line and it's going to give you suggestions. So you make sure to read the suggestions, make sure they're good suggestions, but that is going to help you to write more precisely, to have better spelling and better grammar. And this is just a slide that I created showing some of those red and blue underlines. So you never want to turn something into a teacher that still has red and blue underlines. That kind of shows that you blew off that part of proofreading it and didn't make the corrections that you should have made. This is a infographic that I found on homophones, and homophones are two words that sound the same but are spelled differently and have different meanings. So shown on here, right, as spelled R-I-G-H-T, is shown with the green circle with a check mark, means you got the right answer, but W-R-I-T-E is how you write on paper. Down below, pause. A dog has P-A-W-S, but if you pause a recording or pause music you're listening to, it's P-A-U-S-E. So there are a lot of words like this in the English language, and you just want to make sure that you choose the right word, the one that you're wanting to use. One that I see a lot is N-O versus K-N-O-W. So K-N-O-W is knowing something. I know a lot about working with young children, and no is no, I can't buy a new bike like I want to. So important to know those two different things. This slide just shows some tricky homophones. So I would encourage you to look through this list and just see which ones you may struggle with. There, and there. Three words with different meanings. So T-H-E-R-E is a place. There is like here. Please sit down over there is what I might say. There, T-H-E-I-R, shows ownership. I can't wait to go to their house, meaning they own the house. And finally, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E is an apostrophe for, or is a contraction for they are. They are all crazy. They're crazy. So just make sure you're picking the correct there, or there. Another slide illustrating a little bit more on that concept. Another thing that some people make errors on are the words are and our. They sound the same, but depending on how you spell it, they have a very different meaning. The next one is using spaces. So when you're writing a paper, you have to make sure to have a space between sentences. The top sentence says, my family usually vacations in Hawaii, space. This year we are going to Japan. So as a high school student right now, you're going to use one space between your sentences. When I was learning how to write and learning how to type, we were required to use two spaces, but now you should use one space between your sentences. sentences. This is just another slide showing where one space is required, one space is preferred, and two spaces is preferred. So you might know somebody who's kind of old, and if they learned how to type before 1990, they learned to put two spaces between sentences. So I, your teacher, put two spaces between sentences because that's how we were taught, and that's not something that I can easily unlearn. Pictured on this slide are three different typewriters, and way back when we used typewriters instead of keyboards, we had to use two spaces so people knew where one sentence ended and the next sentence began. But now that computers know how to space letters better, you do not need to use two spaces anymore, rather one space. This slide is on spacing after using commas. So I've received things this year from students where they would be like the second example, apples, comma, pears, comma, and bananas, and they forget to put a space. The proper way to do it is apples, comma, space, pears, comma, space, and bananas. So the third one down at the bottom is incorrect as well because they have two spaces after their commas. So remember, one space after a comma, just like one space after a period. Another important thing to do when you're writing is to be sure to proofread your work. Proofreading is all about reviewing your piece of writing before you submit it, before you turn it in. You're going to fix typos, you're going to fix formatting inconsistencies, you're going to fix spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and punctuation. So make sure you do that. This slide is to remind us that we are not writing a paper on an iPhone where grammar and spelling doesn't make that big of a difference when you're texting a friend. We are actually using computers to write this. So as you're writing a paper for class, please don't use LOL. Please don't use lowercase I when you're talking about I. Rather, use proper spelling and punctuation because you are a high school student. A few final tips and reminders are shared here. First one is pay close attention to the assignment directions. So each assignment you get will have different directions, and you want to make sure that you're following the directions for that assignment. Make sure you give yourself time. So writing takes time. I like to write something, let it rest a day, and then reread it to see if I need to fix anything. Read your work out loud. If I'm writing an important email to somebody, I'm going to read it out loud, and if I find myself tripping over the words, then I might need to fix my writing. Next one is ask a friend or family member to read your work and provide constructive feedback. So my wife Erica, every time she writes an important letter to the families of her family child care, she'll ask me to read it, not because she's a bad writer, just so want another set of eyes looking at it to make sure it sounds good, to make sure there are no errors in that writing. The next one is use your resources. Remember that Google underlines are your friend. Pay attention to those red underlines and those blue underlines. They will help you become a better writer. And lastly, just remember that the final exam paper is worth 10% of your grade, and you're going to be graded on effort, grammar, spelling, organization of ideas, clarity of writing, following directions, thoughtfulness of thinking about what you learned about, etc. So happy writing, and thanks for watching this short video.